Thank you.
It's actually more a comment. I was a consultant and I worked in Babcock, working on lean.
Yep.
And at the same time they were going through this journey. So the one thing that came across for me, and it's a real positive, is the guys on the shop floor who typically are cascaded down the strategy, actually, because of it's more than one-dimensional and they're not just dealing with facts and numbers, actually understood why the company was doing what they were going to do.
Yeah.
So I had a real positive. I mean, I'll take some shares, you know.
Thank you.
But it had a real positive effect on them.
Yeah.
Because typically they were dictated to, and it was, as I said, it was quite bland, the messaging previously, how the strategy was deployed down.
Yes.
But it definitely had a positive effect in their level of understanding.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, Babcock was one of my projects, and, you know, I think it was probably one of the more challenging and frightening environments to go into. If you think of, like, you know, shipyard workers, that's quite a hardcore culture that you're trying to break into there, and a whole set of behaviours. So, yeah, that's fantastic feedback. Thank you. I appreciate that, yeah.
Similar process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strategy deployment, they had a kind of SDM view, like ourselves. But when it came to the guys that were adding the value and getting dirty, and it was a way that they could picture, and not just that, they were involved in trying to understand and comment on why we were doing certain things that were above their pay grade, to be blunt.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the challenges we had there was the affinity with the dockyard they worked out, whether it was Clyde or Devonport, was often their identity was that, not Babcock. Babcock was just this lot of people who paid their wages. Their loyalty was actually, I work at Devonport, I'm under Devonport. So we had to kind of balance the loyalty to their mates with their loyalty to the organisation as well. So it was very carefully crafted how we did that. So it was good to know it landed anyway. I know we got good feedback anyway, but it's always nice to get that validation. Thank you. Excellent. Any other questions? Or yes, gentleman here.
Interested in your thoughts, not necessarily in the context of these games, but just in general, when you're doing kind of small group communication sessions.
Yeah.
Is it better to try and mix people up across functions, across levels of the organisation, or is it better to kind of keep them in their own peer groups to have that discussion, you know, that way?
Yeah, I've seen it work. I'm not sort of sitting on the fence here, but I've seen it work. I think there's pros and cons of either. I think I've seen it work really well where, you know, we've got a frontline person working with an exec, or someone from central working with someone from operations, or that can be really good because it breaks down barriers and people start to see that actually those guys are all human beings as well, and they're just trying to do the best they can. That can be really good. Obviously, it's less easy to kind of relate some of the core messages then to functional objectives because they're so diverse. Similarly, the downside of having functional groups, homogeneous groups, can be that you get groupthink and you get group behaviours, and it's sometimes more difficult to break them down because they're with their mates. And, you know, particularly I'm thinking more of the sort of, you know, the more sort of hardcore sort of front line. So I think it's very much down to the organisation to decide that. There's a practical element as well. If you've got a factory, then are you really going to ship people in from marketing into your factory or vice versa? But on the balance, I would say diverse and heterogeneous groups probably help people to kind of lift their head above their parapet a little bit more. But again, it's down to practicality and you know, cost at the end of the day and logistics as well. So, but good question. Yeah, definitely an issue that's worth thinking about. Any other questions? Gentleman over there.
It's really just a kind of comment. One of our main objectives is to move towards a more interdependent safety culture as a company, as you know.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking here, I can see how you could use the power of this to help convey that message as well.
Absolutely. We've just completed a game for an oil and gas company in the Gulf, which is exactly, it's all about life-saving rules, key safe behaviours, behavioural safety, and that it is a great way. I think anything where you want to take people out of a compliance way of thinking and you want to actually engage their hearts and minds, this is a really powerful approach. I'd be love to speak to you at some point about, you know, some of the safety work that we've done as well.
The reason I raised it is that in Mexico, you know, one of our interns, she developed a whole set of really excellent PowerPoint slides, more kind of cartoon-based.
Yes, yeah.
But it's like, 10 slides or whatever, and that's what we're using to deliver the 7 Habits training.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, there's about 50 slides.
Yeah.
But then when I saw that, I thought, wow,
Yeah.
that puts it all in one big poster.
Yeah. I mean, I think we are going to make obviously a reference to safety. Go home. Is it? I forgot your go home safe. It's outside. I should have remembered it. Yeah. Safe home. Thank you. Hey, safe home. We are going to make a reference to that, but obviously this is a much broader story. But yeah, I'd love to speak to you and show you some of the work that we've done on health and safety, because it's actually an area we do quite a lot in. Not because we're health and safety experts ourselves, but because it works well in that type of environment. Yes.
Yes. My question is, how do you adapt this at the regional level? Now you're working on this at the corporate level.
Yeah.
At the region, we have slightly different emphasis,
Sure.
or slightly more emphasis in a certain area. Do you need to redo all this so that it's more applicable to our region?
So what I think what we're planning to do with yours, and we've done in the past, is there are clearly some corporate messages that we want to get across, and we want consistency around that. However, what we can't obviously cater for every pocket of regional need. So what we'll normally do in that sort of situation is we will make it part of the facilitator's role to maybe gather some regional information, or to put a particular spin or an angle on what it is we're doing. In the materials, I know because we've been working on them, your materials. So I'll give you an example. One of the areas we're talking about is industrial, and there's some global industrial opportunities that Howden has, but they'll probably be different from region to region. It may be, wastewater in one region isn't such a big issue in another. So in those situations, what we'll be encouraging the facilitators to do is to actually either pre-prepare some information about actually the biggest opportunity in our region that relates to this is this. So trying to localize it as much as possible. But it's a fine balance, because what we don't want people to go away and do is completely change the core messages and kind of, go off completely off-piste and create something that is really not what we wanted them to find out in the first place. So there is a delicate balance there, and that's what we'll be working with your teams who are going to choose the facilitators to think, okay, how much of this do we want to keep absolutely consistent? How much can we maybe make some regional variations around? But that will be down to the local facilitation teams to kind of bring that information together. But I think it's a very good point, because what we don't want it to be is, I was always told when I used to have a proper job once. I used to be a line manager. My manager always used to say to me, the core is bore, be vocal with the local. So the core is bore, be local with the vocal, and vocal with the local. And I think it's true. Most teams want to relate the corporate messages to their local agenda, and I think that's what we'll encourage your facilitators to do, to make it as relevant and to say, we're talking about this over there. Well, that thing we're working on and we were talking about last week, that's why we're doing that, to make it as connected as possible. But that, again, relies on good local facilitators who are savvy and not just good talkers as well.